which God practically put me in a position where, my local church had a need, and he used that need along with the personal desire he had given me to shape my call to ministry. When I consider my call to ministry, I think I must trace that back to a moment in my life when I felt called to missions. It was 2007, and I was 23 years old, and I had attended a breakfast in which a missionary spoke. And I remember leaving that breakfast with a very real desire to go on the mission field. And so from that moment on, I think that's what God used to begin to plant within me this desire to serve him more than just, serving occasionally in the local church. So from that moment on, I began to think about missions, began to love missions. I remember reading a biography about missions, and because there was no particular direction or no particular outlet for me to serve on the mission field, I decided just to plunge into serving in my local church. And the local church at the time I was a part of had a prison ministry, so I sort of threw myself into that, which looked like Bible classes that I would teach and also visit one-on-one with some of the inmates and occasionally get to teach at chapel services. The Bible class I taught in was held in the men's barracks, and this particular barrack would be men who signed up for this program, and they would sign up because it would look better for them on parole day. So because of that, it drew and attracted a variety of listeners. And so I would have men that would come listen to my Bible teaching. Some would nap, some would be Buddhists, some would be atheists. They would push back. They, didn't care. And looking back, that was what God used to really plant within me a desire to stand up in front of people and proclaim his word. Looking back, that was what God used to really plant within me a desire to stand up in front of people and proclaim his word. So I'm thankful for those times. Also, when we would have one-on-one visits with these men, you are just keenly aware of the sorrows and the heartbreak of many inmates. And I think I just sort of developed a compassion for them, and I'm thankful for those formative years. Some years after this, the church I was involved in and grew up in was unhealthy, and it sort of developed a crisis situation in which I was serving as a deacon at the time, and the church was sort of dominated by some legalistic tendencies, and as those legalistic tendencies began to crumble and fall apart, that left the congregation just struggling and grasping to know what it looked like to go forward. And so as our church began to go through that period, there was another moment in which there was a struggle among the elders in that leadership. And I was a deacon at the time. And so I was asked to many times fill the pulpit on Sunday morning. And as I did that, I realized that I had a love and a desire for ministry. That happened after being in this period of time in which I called hard church. And that is people I knew and loved were frustrated with how the congregation was going. Some were leaving, some were disappointed. And I remember there was a particular moment in my life, sort of my own self-awareness, which I realized, I'm weary of difficult church, but I love ministry. And when I turned that corner in my mind, I began to be aware that if I continued just providing for my family in a normal way, I would be disobedient to what God had for me to do. And so the fact that the challenge or the difficulty did not drown out that desire actually becomes confirmation. So that led to me pursuing formal training, and I ended up applying and becoming accepted at the Master's Seminary in Los Angeles. So I moved my family, my wife, my 4 children from southern Arkansas. We lived on a dirt road outside the city limits, The nearest town had one traffic light, and we settled into Burbank, California, and studied 4 years in Los Angeles. So to sort of summarize, a call for ministry in my life can be explained in which God practically put me in a position where, my local church had a need, and he used that need along with the personal desire he had given me to shape my call to ministry, to which now I know is not missions, but actually pastoral work. And so I'm thankful for how God used that in my life and put me in a position now where I get to love his people and serve them with his word on a daily and weekly basis.